What's going on, guys? Seth and Chevy here. We just watched season 1 of Frieren Beyond Journey's End. We watched the whole season, all 28 episodes. We're going to be talking about our thoughts on it. We will probably explore spoilers, but we don't really need to go too heavy into them, as we're just going to be talking about our impressions of it. This is my first time watching it. This is your fifth time watching it, so maybe a little bit of a spoiler on what you think of it, but you know, you'll be coming from it from a perspective of somebody who's, you know, watched it, rewatched it, and took things that you learned from the first time. So and then this will be my first time ever seeing it and talking about it. So I'm gonna let you do the recap for the whole season. Obviously, we'll try to keep it brief. We don't have to go into every little detail, but because there's a lot of little details in this show, but all the main events, and then we'll talk about it.
Yeah, and I think just for a little further context, I have actually sat and watched the show proper all the way through twice, and I've watched it through people's reactions 3 times. So so I've seen other people watch the show, although cut versions of the show. So
Gotcha.
If that helps explain that a little better. Also, I'm terrible with names. That don't ever change. So regardless how many times I've seen it. So,
yeah.
So that being said, Frieren, Beyond Journey's End, or Sosono Frieren, if you prefer the Japanese name, is a story about an elf named Frieren. And we start off, and she's with a party of adventurers, Himmel, Heiter, and Eisen. I instantly forgot their names. It's hilarious. And we see them returning from defeating the demon lord. They've saved the world.
They're on a 10-year adventure to do this.
And the story basically puts us in this position of what we do now beyond the journey. And we kind of get a little insight into how specifically Frieren is compared to other races when it comes to emotions and stuff, as she comes off very cold because her concept of time is very different from others.
Which is a huge thing that's played with throughout the whole show.
Yeah. Without going into too many details on how old elves can live, because they don't really specifically say that, she's has some significant years under her belt.
Mm-hmm.
And we learned that basically humans, typically speaking, can live to be 80 to 100, and dwarves live to be about 200 to 500 or something like that, if I remember right.
Yeah, I think so, because I think at one point they refer to somebody being 400, and that's pretty old or something.
Yeah, I think Eisen is pretty old, even though he seems pretty spry for his age.
Yeah.
So yeah, as we kind of explore that, and they end their adventure, they celebrate, they watch a meteor shower. I'm only spending a little bit of time here because obviously we're beginning our journey here. She says the view of it sucks. She'll come back in 50 years and show them a better view. And they all kind of scoff at it. And they're like, okay, see you in 50 years type of thing. 50 years later, she comes back. They're older. And the 2 humans specifically are old men. Himmel is basically on death's door, but she takes them on the journey to see the meteors. And then Himmel passes, in which she is now, for the first time in her life, presented with the death of someone she's close to outside of a later mentioned person. And someone comments that she's really cold about it. And that slowly kind of puts it into her head that she doesn't know anything about humans specifically. And she should have spent time getting to know him better. And so now she wants to begin this journey to better understand humans, which is the beginning of her journey. We fast forward again. She comes to visit Heiter, who is also now close to death's door.
It's either Heiter or Hater, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it's Heiter, at least the way they say it. Whatever the actual pronunciation is, I have no idea. But, he has taken in a war orphan named Fern, and she kind of helps around the house, and he realizes he's getting old, and he wants to make sure Fern's going to be okay. And so he asks Frieren to take on an apprentice. She says no, she can't guarantee the girl's safety. She's not interested in sending a child to die, basically. And so instead he asks her to decipher this grimoire, which is for immortality, basically. And she agrees to do that. And in her free time, also agrees to help Fern learn magic so she can be more self-sufficient. We fast forward basically through a bunch of training and her doing this and scenes and stuff. I don't want to go into every little detail there, but on basically the last year here, he's dying. She figures out the grimoire is a fake, and it was a scheme for her to train Fern, who now can cast magic and will not be a hindrance to her. She takes on Fern as an apprentice, and after Hector passes, they begin their journey, and then they go and they head towards the remaining member of her original party, and he has been kind of talking in letters with Hector about Frieren and trying to help her, because when they saw her cry over Himmel's death, they decided they wanted to help her. And so he comes up with this mission to find this book from this legendary mage called Flom, who we later learn is Frieren's master, who is a mage of old, basically. And in this journey, even Flom recognized that at some point Frieren was going to regret not getting to know people better. And between Eisen and Flom of old, they basically kind of tag team her in that moment and say, you should go on a journey back to End, where the Demon Lord's castle was, because there's a rumor you could speak to the dead there. You can go talk to Himmel and kind of get your last feelings out there. And so now we have the beginning of her retaking the journey, the 10-year journey, this time with Fern in tow. And so she can learn about people and talk to Himmel again. If we fast forward a little bit more, they go to a couple towns here and there, help people, learn some new spells, etc. Fern and Frieren, are learning to coexist, because obviously they're strangers still at this point. And they eventually get to a town where a dragon is hanging out right outside of it. When they go in the town, they run into a boy named Stark, who they learn is Eisen's old student, and they need a frontliner. So they try to convince him. He's a bit of a coward, doesn't want to do it.
He's got Zenitsu energy.
Big time, yeah. But he is incredibly powerful, as we see him chipping away at a mountainside. Fast forward a little more. They convince him to fight the dragon. He solos it, essentially. And they kind of show him, you can do it. And then he comes on the journey. So I am cutting out a lot. I'm trying to get through this. Sorry.
No, that's fine.
They go even further. They start heading into more harsher climates. They hit another town where we get introduced to demons finally. We hear about them a lot, but we haven't really seen any. And we get into a situation where three demons, are walking into a town. Frieren goes to just instantly shoot them because she just views them as enemies. She gets arrested. And we go through this whole process of learning how demons think, basically, and how they use human language to trap humans to be able to consume them and kill them and stuff. So there's a huge lesson.
Yeah, they don't have the same capacity as humans in order of like caring about things, honor, right, dignity, all that kind of stuff. It's just like they'll use language to manipulate to meet their ends or whatever.
Yeah, and we're given the example.
It is kind of an arc to kind of show off what demons are even like, basically.
Exactly. And this arc also gives us a couple things. So we get that with the demons. We're given a flashback of a little girl who just lies to her teeth to survive a town full of humans by, killing a little girl, and then the family, to get, in her mind, to protect her from that family, she takes another family, kills the dad, steals the girl, and tries to give the girl as a, hey, I got you a new daughter. And then, that's the end of her at that point. But it kind of shows an example of like demons don't understand like social constructs and family and emotion and
It's
stuff.
also the example that shows a past mistake that was made before that allows Frieren to kind of have her perspective on not trusting them instantly.
Yeah,
because
she just views them as beasts.
she's already seen this, so she saw people make that mistake already.
And there's also the story that we get to experience magic combat for the first time outside of a couple moments where they show spells and defense and stuff. This is the first time actual fights happen between the demons and the party. And we get to see essentially Stark the sturdy, Fern the quick and full of mana, and then Frieren the very full of mana.
She juiced up.
Yeah. And we were shown that she is over 1,000 years old at this point. I won't go into details of the fights. You should watch that if you're interested. So,
Or you already have because you're watching
here,
this.
right?
Yeah.
But really awesome moments. Also, we also see Frieren just be really cold towards demons, and she says some pretty blunt things to him, which I love to hear. So, yeah, go for a little bit more. We get stuck in a snowstorm. They meet a monk named Kraft, and they spend a winter with him, basically. There's not a whole lot there other than we learned this is the first time Frieren's seen another elf in like 800 years or something like that. It's been a long time.
And we later find out he's one of 2
Legendary
heroes.
Yeah, even
which is
before Frieren's
interesting.
time.
Yeah.
So,
Which is, pretty fucking wild because he's older than her.
yeah.
Which was
he calls
weird.
her young.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which happens twice in the show, which is really weird.
Yeah.
So, at this point we keep going forward and we get to a town with a couple priests and a lot of poison stuff everywhere. They go to leave after helping a priest named Sign, who is stuck in quicksand or mud or something like that, which Frieren is hesitant to even pull him out of there, which is a weird scene, but kind of funny. And as they're leaving, Stark gets bit by a snake. They need to turn back around because he
Instantly.
needs cured. Yeah, even though they were warned to not touch anything, Stark instantly got bit. So they learn Sign is a genius because he heals it instantly, even though his brother, who's like the town cleric, basically couldn't do it. And Sign comes up and does it without thinking about it. So they spend some time trying to convince him. He's kind of hesitant because he's like getting older and has these like regrets of not adventuring with his childhood friend who went off to be an adventurer. They kind of use that against him, and then his brother also gives him kind of the last push, and he becomes the party's priest. They go forward. I'm going to skip some stuff. They basically have a couple adventures, and then they get to a point where he gets a lead, and he decides he needs to leave the party to go find his friend. So they go on without him, which was kind of to throw in just a quick opinion real quick. Interesting take for a show because usually you gain party members and they're the cast of the show, and in this case we had him for like 2-3 episodes or something like that, and he's just gone. So
yeah, it was interesting.
Really weird. Yeah. But he also serves as a mediator for them, which also kind of teaches them how to talk to each other better as a party going forward. Even though they still have some struggles, you see, especially later in the show, Stark kind of take up the role of mediator later, which is interesting to see as well. They eventually learned that they can't go forward into the Northlands without a A-class mage, but there's an exam every 3 years, and it's coming up in a city called Alcest, I believe it's called, and that's where they're going to head. And as we go there, we see a green-haired mage named Ubil, who's just sitting on a rock, and a bunch of bandits come up, and she kind of just turns and feigns fear to them, and then all of a sudden our previously met monk Kraft shows up, punches them, and they all run from him. And when she goes to thank him for saving her, and he looks at her and goes, I saved them because I found a bunch of graves of a bunch of bandits already. She gets like, she's gonna have to defend herself, and he basically goes, I'm not against you defending yourself, but there's no need for senseless death, basically.
Yeah.
And then he goes on his way. So we're introduced to another mage at this point, and then we get to Alcest, and they introduced a ton of mages. I'm not going to be able to remember all their names. There are some key characters, obviously, but this arc is a series of 3 magic tests that need to be done to get the license. They don't have a means in which to initially take it, though, because in Frieren's case, she's never even take her third or second class test. She doesn't have any proof she's a mage on paper, except for some old symbol she carries on her. They're about to be turned away, but an old mage that is part of their organization recognizes it barely and says she can take the test. So I don't want to go through all the tests in great detail, but the first test is basically a magical dome where they have to catch these birds that are highly sensitive to mana and can travel at the speed of sound or past the speed of sound.
And they're in teams and they're against each other basically. Yeah. So it's like just kind of a good reason for them to have to strategize and go against each other and different strategies.
And we get to know all the new characters that we're getting introduced to, the types of mages they are, and also just a little more like how the world of magic for humans exists. One big point they kind of bring up is modern magic takes objects and uses magic to move them versus old magic like Frieren and Fern use create from magic. It's harder to do. It takes more mana. But because of that, Frieren has told Fern that you don't need to learn all these other spells because modern mages can't keep up with you, basically, if you know just pure magic. So we get this kind of like lesson of how people have become soft because they don't have to defend themselves from the demon lord as much anymore. So second test is a dungeon they have to take through, and the only requirement is to get to the bottom of it. I'm not going to go through it. You should, if you're this far, you've seen it, but if you're for some reason listening anyways, probably one of the highlights action wise of this season. You should definitely watch it. And then the third test is basically the founder of this organization is an ancient mage named Ciri. She thinks too many people pass the second test, and she wants to basically just make sure it's not a fluke. So she goes through and judges them whether they pass or fail. It is worth noting here that she is also hiding her mana, but no one seems to be able to notice. And she has an obsession with people who are talented. And so when she tests Fern, and Fern notices her mana is flickering and that she's suppressing it, she instantly wants her as a student. So, but she does pass them. They're allowed to continue.
All predicted by Frieren.
Yes, because she knows her. They have a history, as Ciri was Flom's master. Flom was Frieren's master. They finish the test. They have a Class A mage. Then go forward. That's the end of the season. So anything I missed you think should have been brought up? It was kind of long-winded.
No, the only thing I would even add to the whole thing is that you get the 10 years in the beginning of the original journey, and then there's a jump in time with the original party. They die off, and then you meet Fern as a child, which you did say, but just to kind of reemphasize, she has to get older throughout this one season. Yeah, she's like a little kid, and then by the end of the season, she's like taller than Frieren, and there is, for a while, it's like the same year for a while in the season, but then like at one point it passes a whole year. So like time is passing,
in the show,
in just season one alone, which is something I noticed a lot because the whole show plays with time and history.
Yeah, it starts
constantly.
Off after the death of Himmel, it starts saying how many years since he's died, and it does get to a point. I think it gets up to 28 years after his death.
Yeah.
And then time finally starts slowing down a little bit, so we can actually have a story. But and then the only other thing, there's constant flashbacks through the whole show too that show her adventures with the party, but there also is moments she's remembering that are relevant to her journey now. You could say they're conveniences, but I did think it's more of a her just kind of connecting with humans through reliving moments she didn't think anything of in the time, and now she's recognizing those moments. So
yeah.
I'll
jump into impressions. This is my first time watching this season. I went into it with a lot of hype that I've heard from you, and while it was happening, a lot of people are talking about it, so I expect it to be good, and I can say it was good. I watched through it. I was super engaged the whole time. I thought it was interesting that the show it's not an action show. it's more about characters and an overarching storyline and lore of a world, with action playing a secondary part. But when it does happen, it's always handled very well, animated great, especially towards the end of the season. There's some pretty crazy stuff they do. I think you said they brought in people from JJK to work on some of that, and it definitely fucking looked like it. But I'm actually surprised that so many people were hyping this up, because it's not just an action anime. It's like a character piece. It's like it's exploring connections, relations, regret of not doing certain things in the past. And I enjoyed that aspect of it a lot. But I'm surprised so many other people did. Not saying people can't enjoy that, but people typically gravitate towards like the more actiony anime. Is like, yeah, they want to see just cool ass action. This has that, but it's not regular. It's just events that happen. Like when they ran into, was he Zoldrak? Zold something?
Zoltrak's a spell, but
but the
I can't
demon.
remember his name, but he's a giant demon who invented the spell.
Yeah, it's like really early on in the season, but like they're like revisiting a town, and they basically go into the history of like they had to seal him up because they couldn't defeat him at that time. And then they come back, and she's like, we should probably get rid of him at this point, so because he's going to come out soon anyway. And then they end up taking him out like really easily. But it's just like a really interesting showcase of like,
it's been 80 years
time and how things have changed. There's even a part later in the season where they talked about oh man, what was it? I think they're talking about Fern, how she grew up in a world where
elves don't understand Zoltrak very well. It's a new spell for them.
Yeah,
versus Fern grew up with it, so it's like
kind of like kids growing up with the internet almost. Like it was kind of weird. So anyway, there's a really good sense of history and these events that happen where they do run into this demon guy, they got to kill him, and then like later when the demons are trying to basically sneakily take out this castle of people, and then there's action sequences there, and they're always gratifying. They feel worth it because they're not just doing action constantly. I really enjoyed that. But yeah, my favorite thing about the show was definitely the history of it. I'm a huge history buff, like in real life. And so a show that's like exploring the idea of existing in the present, but there is a past, and there's all these things that happen, even with minor characters. They go into small towns, they'll talk to people, and they're like old people, but they have stories of when they were a kid, and like Himmel inspired them, or like other things happened that affected them, or Frieren isn't as well known as like Himmel, but like people know her name, but they don't really know the face, or they'll be like, I think I know who you are, or something like that. It's cause she's just part of that party. There's a really cool aspect of that I really, really liked. It was my favorite part of the whole show, was the history aspect. I loved the feeling of time passing, history existing. There's constantly, because of the music, which is really good, this like somber and almost like sad feeling throughout the whole show, because you feel time passing. I literally said like halfway through the season, I'm like, we already know that her original party got old and died, except for Eisen, and he's old and unable to go on an adventure at this point. And then time is actively passing through the season, and I was like, is Fern gonna get old in this? Like, and if you guys know anything, don't tell me. I know obviously I don't have enough to make a season 2 yet, but if there's anything after what we've seen, I don't want to know about it. But I was like, is Stark gonna get old? Like, is Frieren just gonna keep fucking like living on past these people eventually? I have no idea. But obviously we're dwelling on this adventure in the story, but it's just kind of crazy to be watching an anime where the central character is able to exist beyond other people's life cycles, basically, and it kind of has this almost like sad thing to it, but that's kind of important to her character because she's kind of like learning late to connect with people, which is obviously difficult for her because in a lot of ways she doesn't connect with people, but then a lot of ways you notice she has her ways of caring. Like when Fern's staff was broken, she went out of her way to get it fixed when it didn't need to be. She could have just got a new one, but she knew that
she didn't even understand why it needed to be fixed. She just knew that Fern wanted it.
Yeah, exactly. So she went out of her way to do something for her which was a cool scene when the guy was fixing it, because he even noticed like it was a well-maintained staff, and obviously someone gave a fuck about it. So and so yeah, she's an interesting character in that regard, because she's kind of robotic in a lot of ways, but then certain things give her an element of humanity, even though she's not human. Her interest in like magic items, the only time she'll be enthusiastic,
or learning folk magic.
yeah. Or trying to give Stark a fucking potion of was it gets rid of
Dissolves
clothes.
clothes.
Yeah. She's like really adamant about giving him that. She's like, there's still a little bit in here. But yeah, so the time passing thing I really like. I really enjoy, even when they talk to random people and you get elements of that, and then the characters aging over time, which is really interesting. It's also it also has this feeling of like passing the torch, because from the beginning of like Fern showing up till where we're at now in this season, she started off as like somebody with a lot of potential already, because she was doing stuff that was pretty crazy, and she had this drive to want to get better and better at.
Yeah, she was casting Zoltrak as a child.
Yeah, exactly. And she didn't want to, or Frieren didn't want to take her on at first, but then she did reluctantly anyway. And now like she's becoming more powerful. And then like obviously we're talking spoilers here, but like after the 3 mage exam, she's one of the only people who like passed, because she has a lot of potential. And Frieren says that she might become someone even
famous
in this era, someone more famous than her, which also is another thing that I love about the idea of eras, and her era.
Like no one remembers Kraft, but there are statues of him.
That's literally what I was going to bring up. Is like Kraft is a like a pre-era thing to even Himmel's era. So it has this really cool feeling of like history keeps moving on, and Frieren only is like a vessel for us to view that, because she can live so long. Other than that, a lot of this would be forgotten or barely remembered, because all these people are fucking old, who are even around for that era. So really cool stuff. And it does feel like Frieren's just kind of like having her own personal journey, but also equipping Fern to be the best mage she can be, which is cool. She's also very supportive of everybody, like Stark and everybody. She's like, just wants them to, be good at what they do and get better, stuff like that. So it's a fun way to kind of move through the show with her as the main character.
To kind of piggyback off that a little bit, I think it's also interesting to notice the difference between like, because we spend so much time with Frieren, but then we meet other mages, and a lot of them are very combat focused. Or magic's a tool, or I mean, even with Siri believes in power. Yeah. Right. Frieren isn't like that. And even Flom had noticed that when taking her on as an apprentice, basically saying, we can't beat the Demon Lord. We don't know anything other than combat. Frieren understands peace and will bring an era of peace. And so you kind of see that in the way she treats other people too, and her interest in magic and stuff. So.
Yeah, just funny though, because she's like super fucking powerful. So, there's a couple scenes where it's just like, I was like, is she basically Gojo in this world, but not quite. She's not quite that powerful.
Siri's
but
more powerful. But
and she had like fight herself. But I was thinking the whole time when she was fighting herself in that second test, I was like, the only thing that can beat Frieren is Frieren with Fern.
With a distraction.
Yeah, you need Frieren and something else to beat Frieren. So I was like, that makes sense. But yeah, I really like the art style. I like the character design. It's got a good art style, character design. The music goes really well with the visuals. They definitely try to capture a feeling of adventure, but also, again, my favorite thing about the show, it feels like time is passing. We go through seasons, we go through montages of like months going by. So the show is definitely about like time passage, which I really dig. And the music really encapsulates that really well. It also has this one song that plays a lot during big action sequences that they always time perfectly with the spell happening. And it just really works for me, audio wise. Every time they do that, I'm like, yeah, they nailed that, the timing. Spells are also really cool in the show. This isn't really a melee combat show. There's a little bit of it, but not a whole
two
lot.
of the mages are pretty melee based.
Yeah.
Ubil and I can't remember the girl's name with the more of like the Chinese style look.
Yeah.
With the bow staff,
but well, Stark exists too. So there's like warriors, but they're not the main. They're not the main focus. There's part of the party comps basically. But you really see it showcased towards the end of the season when you have all these mages in the dungeon doing all different types of different kinds of magic, different kinds of spells and specialties and stuff like that. It was just kind of crazy. You see like everybody has like their very specific things they're doing, but then like when Frieren's fighting Frieren replica, they're just casting unimaginable. You don't know what, like, this is magic beyond the fucking realm of existence. It's like it's like time and space is warping. It's fucking crazy shit.
When it goes back to as well, where they explain that modern mages just take objects and move them with magic. Frieren's literally creating elements. So
yeah, well, it definitely comes off like that because like that one dude is like using earth magic, and you know, the other guy can like clone himself, which was wild. That it was revealed. It was kind of a baller move. Fucking. They played it multiple times, like 2-3 times, where this guy was using these clones of himself when things were happening. And it's like, you don't know if it's actually him or not, but, you know, he's making it so whoever's fighting him thinks they're fighting him, whatever. But then you find out later he was never actually there the whole time, taking the test. He was doing it from a faraway location. That kind of elevates. At first, I'm like, yeah, he's got the glasses. He's the smart guy. He's always going to outsmart you. Very typical. But the idea that he was never there in the first place, I'm like, okay, that kind of demonstrates how powerful he was. You know, otherwise he felt like kind of a side mage there. But that he was like astral projecting, basically. I'm like, oh, okay, that is pretty wild. So that was a cool little reveal. And yeah, all the magic was really cool. Definitely stayed fresh and interesting, always something new, even though Fern basically just always just blasted shit.
Without even thinking.
She's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
She just shoots shit, but it's satisfying to watch all these different lasers and shit flying at things.
Even when she shoots at Frieren to show her weakness, the moment her staff was in her hand, she already was shooting.
Yeah.
It was like instant. Versus like you'll watch like Frieren do it a lot, and usually the glyph shows up and then it shoots, versus it's like the same time for Fern.
She's fucking
quick draw.
Quick draw, yes. Exactly. I was trying to remember how to say. Yeah. Overall, I really like the show though. I definitely am still kind of like, I'm glad that people also like it. Part of me, I'm like, is confused on why so many people liked it, but at the same time, I'm like, that's good that people are looking for something a little different than, like, you know, your typical like Naruto and JJK and, you know, Demon Slayer type stuff, which are, you know, all great, but this has like a little more of a subtlety to it that I'm glad people could appreciate, because I liked it. And yeah, how about you jump into your thoughts? Obviously, you've watched it quite a bit, and I'll piggyback off some stuff if I feel inclined.
Okay, well, I'm sure with the beginning of me saying how many times I've seen it, it's probably pretty obvious how I feel about it. But for me, I'm going to very much start with that, because I have seen people online who don't like the show for the reasons I do like it.
What don't they like?
The pacing of the show is slow. Yeah, and I like that a lot, because I feel like, especially in this journey, the way they handle the moments, the characters, the music, like it feels almost like Lord of the Rings, where you're just like on
it feels like an adventure,
this journey, and I love it. And the way the people who directed and made the anime handled their music choices, their color choices, the angles they decide to depict and stuff like that, it's just a beautiful, beautiful show in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And it just really does it for me in that way. And just as a fan of, like, you know, art and animation and stuff like that, it's a treat in that regard. And then, like, I love every character in the show, even like ones we see for a moment, because they're treated and written like human beings. And I absolutely love that aspect of the show.
One thing I'm going to throw out there about the characters, I'm not like super in love with like most of the characters. I do like the main ones, but I don't want to compare it directly to JJK, but one thing I had a problem with the first season of JJK, second season really rounded out the show for me, but they introduced a bunch of fucking characters out of nowhere, and we didn't spend a lot of time with them. And I was like, I don't care about any of these people. And that was within one season. They had to try and do that. And I don't think they did a good job with that, but they round them out better with the movie and the second season. This show did a much better job. And I'm only using JJK as an example because that's a show I do like, and I don't think they did that well in the first season. And this show, at first it introduced all these mages or whatever. I'm just like, okay, yeah, I get it. You guys all have your different things. But like, I think they spent enough time with them sitting and talking that I got to get to know them better than just like a bunch of action sequences. And I appreciated that. And even before that part, but like, when they first met, like, oh God, what's his name? The
Dankin?
elf.
Oh,
No,
the elf, Kraft.
Dankin. I actually like Dankin.
Yeah.
Kraft.
Yeah.
They're barely with him, but I thought the moments that they talked with him were like, they kind of like gave him a very clear picture of what his character was. And I was like, okay, I like him too. I barely know anything about him. So yeah, I think that the characters are fleshed out well in the first season.
I think it's one of the strongest points of the show for me.
It's like I said, it's a character show. It's
Yeah.
more about the characters and the overarching story than it is anything else.
Yeah, and even when we get to the mage exam, and there are a ton of mages, even some of the ones we barely see, like, and I forgot their names already, but you have the smaller party with the guy with the mustache, the guy with the weird like E shape at the end of his staff, and then the girl who specializes in is it mind control magic? I think I can't remember. Maybe it was like
She could like restrain people and stuff.
Yeah,
that you're
yeah,
talking
yeah.
about, yeah. The taller one.
we were given enough time with them even for them to. We don't get backstories on all three of them, but like we get enough where their personalities are allowed to exist, even though they're they're just kind of in a common theme in the show. Most mages seem to be kind of like borderline bored at all times, which
Yeah.
I also kind of like because. I mean, even intellectuals in real life come off kind of bored. So
It's funny you mentioned that when we're watching it, and I noticed it after. Like I kind of noticed it before because I brought up that Fern always looks like really concentrated,
And-
but like
and
kind
kinda
of
tired.
dead.
Yeah.
But she's like, you can tell she's interested, she's paying attention, but like she's not an expressive person.
Yes.
I thought that was really interesting about her. But then, and Frieren's also like that, but she's also lived like 1,000 years, so like a lot of things aren't fucking new to her.
Yeah.
But then after I brought that up, and you had just brought up all the mages, I was like, yeah, they all are kind of like that to a certain extent. Not quite what I was talking about, but it made me think about that as we watched it. When you watch something else where people are fighting hand to hand with swords or whatever, it's like more of a physical thing they have to do. They have to swing stuff. They got to block stuff. It's all in the moment. But with people who are shooting and casting things, they have to strategize mentally, and so everyone's more focused. Everyone's more internally thinking than like physically emoting, and so everyone does seem when they're doing the like in the middle of combat, everyone looks very focused, concentrated.
With few exceptions, like when the girl who's good with mental magic does get hit by the sense clone's hair, her eyes pop for a second because obviously she experiences pain in that moment.
She's getting hit, but
so like they do have emotion and stuff. It's just when they're surprised finally.
yeah, but like you were saying with the intellectual thing, I get that aspect, but also beyond that, I think just so much of it is mental strategy that's happening. They're thinking about what the other person's doing and how to counteract it. Everyone's got like the same shield ability, so people are using that a lot. Anytime someone shoots at them, we saw multiple times where like people get to a point in combat where like they just have to start blasting at the person to wear them out because they're just blocking everything they're doing anyway. So they got to like just hit them as hard as they can.
Try to wear out their mana.
Yeah, so there's all these different strategies happening, stuff like that. So I think it's kind of a fun twist on combat in a show.
They also do, like the way they explain magic, I think is fun too, because they basically say magic is imagination. So if you can picture something, it can be done with magic.
But also to the detriment of that, if you can't,
it becomes
you're limited.
impossible.
Yeah.
And so they also bring up that it's also akin to like rock, paper, scissors, except for there's more than 3 options. So there's infinite options.
But there's always a counter.
There's
to
always
something.
something that'll counter you. So really kind of helps explain how the magic system works. And then we get another like great example of that, which I love, where like Yubel's like a very new mage. She's just not. She has she has 2 spells now, but she doesn't really have a lot of magic, to our knowledge, and she's inexperienced in all this stuff. And most of the mages we see could beat her, But then this greater mage that no one can picture beating, she very confidently thinks she can, because the only thing she sees at this in sense is that she's hair, and hair can be cut with scissors, so she should be able to cut it too. Even though everyone else thinks about it like that hair is ingrained with all these magical spells and blah blah, and she's super fast and like it's impossible to even imagine beating her. She just kind of goes, "You can cut hair, and my spell's cutting, so I can do it." And then she just wins easily, which in theory she shouldn't be able to at her level. So
Yeah, but from her perspective, it's imaginable.
yeah, it's just a simple task.
Yeah.
So really kind of neat way they handle magic. I also love the way the show just like romanticizes magic. It's like always so cool looking.
Yeah, it's definitely an anime for magic lovers. I'm not even like a big like mage magic type person when I like play games or do anything that has to do with that kind of stuff. And I really enjoyed that aspect because they're imaginative with it. It wasn't just like fireballs and lasers and shit, even though there's plenty of laser looking stuff. But like there's a lot of
laser, yeah.
but they're like super impactful too,
Yeah.
which I really like. The sense the feeling of like power, which was done really well.
Yeah, well, and even when they talk about defense spells and how like they were designed to stop magic, but not necessarily physical things. So that's why modern magic's better against defense spells, because it's mixing physical and magic together, and it can break through. As you see with like the rock guys, spell often will just break through shields, and then the giant water ball that he tries to defend and just instantly shatters his shield. You get moments like that, and they're just really cool. So. Without going into every little detail of magic, because I could probably talk about it forever. I really like, basically, I've already talked about the journey, the music, the characters, stuff like that, but also that the show takes its time to like give us the stepping stones for this journey we're going to take, and we're constantly reminded about events in the past, which honestly I could make a show about it. With all the stuff they show with the past as well, we could see the journey to beating the demon lord. That could be its own show, to be honest.
I literally thought that multiple times. So it's like if they really wanted to, they could do a prequel show to this.
Yeah,
easily.
But then also, just seeing the growth of the two effectively children that are with Frieren at all times. So, yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of shows I love, but I usually have critiques and nitpicks, and I can't think of anything I would change about this season personally. I think it's just a completely enjoyable experience. I know not everyone's going to agree with that, but
yeah,
for me, it was just like a perfect season of anime, basically. So.
Yeah, I really liked it. I really liked the pacing, but I also think that if character dynamics, dialogue, and exploring history and time isn't going to be interesting for you, that pacing would suck.
Yeah.
So it's definitely of your interest that's going to really dictate how much you like the show, because I liked that part. I liked the slow pace of it. I liked the feeling of passage of time. I liked all the dialogue. I liked the random no-name characters you're never going to see again in these towns that they talk to, that just mention shit that happened when they were a kid.
So subtly too.
Yeah.
Because like even like Sense, when she's constantly talking about how much Flom's a failure, but then like at the same time she's speaking, she's remembering her time with Flom as a child. She obviously cared about her. She just can't ever. She's not good about expressing her feelings.
Yeah.
Imagine that, another elf who can't be emotional.
Yeah, there's connective tissue there. They're similar in some ways. That's why I think their dialogue, Frieren and Sense,
Sari,
yeah. Frieren and Sari's dynamics interesting because they feels like they're kind of butting heads, because they're both kind of like detached type people with strong differing opinions. And they've also both been around for a while now. Obviously, Sari's been around longer, but Frieren's also been around for a long time. So like there's like, you're higher up and more in authority than I am, but also like, I know my shit. So it's kind of interesting to watch that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I only offered that because if somebody complains about the pacing, I wouldn't even like try to defend it. Because if you're not into what the show's doing for the majority of the show, that pacing's gonna suck. Because it spends a lot of time in just the passage of time and people just kind of like discussing things and very subtle things. So yeah, if you're looking for something else, you're looking for like, oh, I really like these mage battles. I want more of that. Like, yeah, it's going to be a long wait for a lot of those, but they always feel like big payoffs when they do happen. It feels like an event happening on the adventure as opposed to, you watch other animes where like every episode they get into a fight on the adventure.
Yeah.
Which, that's fine as well, because in that world there's combat happening constantly, and this is a post war world where everything's kind of in peace. We even had like a quick little thing where Frieren talked to that fucking elder mage guy who's also a series student. I forgot his name. And and she mentioned that like he's powerful and he's living in the wrong era basically, because he's got nothing to do anymore.
They basically hint that he could have beaten the Demon Lord.
Yeah. Yeah, he's like this super powerful dude, and he's just kind of living in a time where it's all been done. That war's over. So it's just kind of an interesting thing that I appreciate. But yeah, I don't
He
know.
also just blasts through Frieren's shields easily when he attempts to challenge her. So
Yeah, I feel like she could beat him, but
right, but defense magic wasn't doing it. So
it kind of showed off. He's like no slouch, obviously. So, yeah, forgot what we're talking about. I just brought that up because
you were talking about people who might have
pacing
issues. With the
Yeah.
show, so.
Yeah, if that doesn't do it for you, all those little hints at people's characters and stuff like that, yeah, I get it completely. I was bringing that up because other animes, they're fighting things constantly, because in that storyline, Demon Slayer, there's demons fucking everywhere. They're hunting them down, stuff like that. This show, the war's already over. There's just remnants of it. I fucking love that shit. It kind of reminds me of like, post World War II and how different people handled that and recovered from that, and how there's certain things that had to be handled after that and stuff like that. So I really dug that part. Yeah. What else you got?
I'd just be gushing still, honestly. So, just overall, I love the show and every aspect of it. So, it's definitely a for me show. So,
yeah, I get that. When we started watching, I was like, I understand why Chevy really loves this. I like it too, but I think you're gonna like it more than me, no matter what, because it definitely feels made for you. So, although I liked it more than I thought I would, so that's good. I thought I was gonna like it anyway. I heard all the hype. I'm like, it's got to be good. But watching it, I was like, this is the part I'm not hearing about as much, is the things I'm really digging about it. So,
well, it also aired at a weird time because it started when JJK season 2 was ending. So the first half of this season was at the last half of season 2 of JJK.
Yeah.
So a lot of people didn't pick it up until after that.
That kind of speaks to how good it is, though, because coming off of JJK season 2, which was like fucking huge, people were still talking about Frieren. Just like Delicious in Dungeon, it took like halfway through that season for people to start talking about it. I remember we're doing reviews every episode, and no one gave a fuck. In our we don't get much views, but like in our very minute views, they were like growing every week.
With the show.
And I was like, oh, people are like watching this now. Yeah. So, and then I was hearing about it more and more in podcast shit. You're like, are you watching Delicious in Dungeon?
I'm watching.
Or people are like, are you watching Frieren?
Watching it for the first time. They tried watching and dropped it, and they're trying to watch it again because people won't leave them alone now.
Don't do that.
They're like, no, you need to finish that one.
Yeah, get past the first like 5 episodes, because even us, we're like, and we're not talking about Delicious in Dungeon. Don't worry, we're not going to spoil anything. But like the first like 4 or 5 episodes, we're both like, yeah, this is fun, but how long is this going to go on for? What's even the plan here? And then by the end of it, and also go watch our review.
Further sidetrack it a little bit. Frieren, Delicious in Dungeon, and I'm almost done with Mushoku Tensei. But if you're into like fantasy and magic, those 3 shows are great. So.
I don't know if I know the other one. Mushoku Tensei.
It's about it's an isekai. Basically, the guy gets he dies and gets reincarnated into a new world, and is a powerful mage. So
interesting.
Pretty good though. Probably going to be the most controversial of 3 because it is very okay with being perverse.
Oh, is that the one you talked about? People are like, don't like the main character or something like that?
There's people who just do not like it. Yeah. There's stuff that happens in it. So.
Yeah. Yeah, makes sense.
But it's a beautiful show. So
I'll have to check it out or watch a trailer or something like that so I can get a visual on it. So should we grade it?
Yeah, by all means.
You grade it first. I'm curious about your grade.
Well, I mean, this is the only show I have ever given a 10 out of 10 on my own list. So I'm going to give it an A+.
Kind of have to.
Like I said, for me, as a season of anime, it's not over, so I don't know the whole show yet,
Mm-hmm.
how I feel about it. But this season was perfect. Like, I loved every episode.
I thought it
Pacing,
ended well
music,
too.
art, everything. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And had like a nice like end cap. So like it didn't feel like a huge cliffhanger. It's just like what happens next on the adventure, but
journey
there's no
continues.
there's no big event that's like fuck what it's like it actually had an end point, which is nice. So
Yeah, I
I
just
think
think
they
it's
handled it well.
beautiful. So
Yeah. A plus. I'm gonna give it a strong A minus. I really liked it. Didn't love it, but I really liked it a lot. There's parts about it I really loved. But I definitely want to see the next season, whenever the hell they make that. Just because I feel invested in it. I really like the characters. I really like the world. I love the history. That's my favorite part of the show. When combat happened, it was really fucking cool. And yeah, I just want more from the world. Mostly, like, just really liked the lore, really liked the history part of it, really liked the time aspect of it. Frieren's a fun character. I really like Fern. Stark is kind of hit or miss for me. I like him. He can be funny for sure. He does the Zenitsu thing where he freaks the fuck out about everything, but I wanted more from him. I know it's more about like the magic stuff, but like I really wanted more from him as a character. I felt maybe that's why it's an A minus for me.
it was a little unfair too at the end because like it was a mage exam. Like, what's Stark gonna do?
yeah, he was like absent, and
Yeah.
like why would he be involved at all anyway? But there's that small little part where he had to play that dude's son for a little bit. That was kind of interesting
That was fun,
because he
yeah.
looked just like him for some reason. But again, that let us kind of dive into those people's world and their dynamics, their history, and shit like that. So I really liked that. But yeah, A minus, definitely watching season 2. And when that comes out, whenever it does, because obviously they're not even working on it because they can't, we'll probably just do episodic shit for that because or reviews, not shit. That was a little vague there. Just because, yeah, I would definitely watch that. So, yeah, A minus, A plus. We both liked it a lot. Let us know in the comments what you guys think of Frieren Beyond Journey's End.
Beyond Journey's End.
Beyond Journey's End. We're talking full spoilers, so let us know in the comments what are your favorite things about this show. Maybe you didn't like it at all. If you didn't like it, as long as you're not like an asshole about it, let us know.
Sure.
Open to that. And or if you have critiques at all, maybe you liked it, but you didn't like some things about it. But what are some of the big highlights for you? Your favorite parts of the season, favorite things about the show, the characters, who are your favorite characters? What was your favorite fight that happened?
Did you have a favorite moment?
Me? Oh man, put me on the spot. I really liked the part where Frieren went against the girl with the scale, because that was kind of a cool showcase of just how powerful Frieren was. I also like the early parts of the show when we're still kind of easing into the adventure, because we're getting this like history unfolding. I liked when she was hanging out with Old Hider and Fern. I thought that was really interesting. The mage exam I thought was a lot of fun. I also really liked, oddly enough, when Siri was failing everybody and passing, because I thought it was kind of it kind of elevated her as a character of just like, even Frieren says her intuition's really good. And so you kind of just, even though it was like blatant, like, yeah, you failed, like, sorry, like, bye.
Not even sorry.
Not even sorry. Yeah, exactly. You kind of still go like, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. You would pass that person and fail them.
Like the water mage. I can't remember her name right now, but she's not a strong mage. She's useless without water.
Well, and she was saying too, a lot of these people didn't even have confidence in themselves to actually be like a first class mage. They just, were doing it because they're like, I'm gonna try, but
She's effectively responsible for sending people out to potentially their death. So.
Yeah. Well, I think it also solidifies that she thought, and I thought it was kind of an interesting factor, that too many people got through because of Frieren, basically. And so it would be irresponsible to just pass all them, because they probably wouldn't have made it in the first place.
Yeah, but though she like backed up on that a little bit and apologized, since she was like, yeah, there was a lot of people who did pass. Though.
Sure, she still passed people, but she was right to think that.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was really cool. There's another thing that I can't remember for some reason that I really liked. I don't remember. What about you?
One of my favorite scenes, and it's probably gonna be no surprise, for a lot of people, but when Fern blasted off the Frieren clone's arms, and she's like talking about it, and the camera takes a moment to kind of just stop on Frieren's face, because this isn't actually Frieren. It has no emotions, and it's just got this cold stare on her, which is crazy looking.
Yeah.
And then she does what I assume is like a gravity spell, but like Fern in that moment goes, I don't know what hit me. I can't even sense magic. What the hell's happening?
It's the first time she's been attacked by Frieren, basically.
One, just not being able to, she can't tell, even while being attacked, she can't tell magic's on her. So,
yeah.
And she kind of says, like, this is like in the pinnacle of magic, basically. This is insane.
Mm-hmm.
And then Frieren, after that moment, compliments Fern on basically pushing her to use something she hasn't used in 80 years, which is a reference to when she fought the Demon Lord. So basically saying Fern pushed Frieren to the same extent the Demon Lord had pushed her, because that's the last time she used that gravity spell.
Yeah, which kind of sets up Fern to be this huge potential.
So outside of just the badass moment, just the implication there, I loved.
Yeah, it was a cool one.
She basically like, hey, you made me use some crazy shit there. Good job.
Mm-hmm.
And then I like most of the moments where like we get to experience like a big moment in someone's growth on the show, because it's like they're really good at making them into events. Like, you know, even the beginning of the show when Fern can hit the boulder, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that moment is treated so like respectfully and like is made into this grand moment. So
same thing with Stark with the dragon.
Yep, just
he's
like
doubting himself the whole time. He feels like a fraud because he basically was. But then Frieren allows him to fight the dragon on his own, and he kills it.
Yep.
She's like, good job. And he's just like trying to process what the fuck happened, because he has this doubt in his mind, and it was just holding him back, basically.
And then, anytime we have to dip into Frieren actually having to like show a little bit of her actual potential, like with the scale, thing where she basically is like, oh, I'm glad you took the option of our mana competition and not just swarming me, because that would have been hard.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been around a long time, and here, let me show you my mana real quick, and you're just like, oh, that's a huge difference. So and then she just told her to kill herself, which was so cold.
Yeah, brutal. Definitely brutal.
She's just conscious while cutting off her own head.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, but she doesn't respect her as like she's a demon, so she's like, fuck you, like just get out of here.
You're just a monster.
Yeah, so. Exactly.
But yeah, those are probably my favorite moments, because like we hear Frieren's amazing, and then we get tastes of it from time to time.
Yeah, she's not she's pretty basic
like
otherwise.
attention.
Yeah, she's kind of running around looking for grimoires and shit, magic stuff, and keeping to herself mostly and oversleeping. But then, when she's pushed, you get to see revealed, what over 1,000 years of magic, learning magic from all over the place, and
according
the
to
experience she's had.
Relaxed learning, because apparently, she thinks Frieren's weak for how old she is. So which is.
Well, because she didn't pursue what she thinks she should have pursued, which was funny when Fern picked the clothes cleaning spell. It's very
instead of a destruction,
very Frieren of her to do that, because Ciri was not happy about that. So.
But those are my favorite moments for sure, though. Is like moments of growth and moments of like dipping into like what Frieren's capable of. So
I. That is one of my favorite parts of the show. It's just all the small things that feel like character growth and stuff like that. Like the episode where Stark is trying to figure out Fern on her birthday and getting her gifts, stuff like that. It's like a whole episode kind of centered around that, and it's more so about like character dynamics. And I forgot the guy's name that was with them. The fucking Sign, yeah. We got a lot from him in that episode as well, as a character that I thought was a lot of fun. Especially, it's funny that he and Frieren kind of treat each other like they're older, even though Frieren's obviously way older. But from her life scale,
she calls him Sonny, I think, at one point.
But then he feels like he's an older dude, so like he talks to her from a perspective that's different than like Stark and Fern. So that was a good episode and a good character episode. But if you're not into that would have been a really long episode for you. So I completely understand. A lot of that stuff was really good too. So, but let's know everything you think about in the comments below when it comes to Frieren Beyond Journey's End. That's going to do it. We're probably going to start watching something else here soon. Let us know in the comments what you would recommend for us. We got I don't know what's coming out next season, but I think there's something we're going to watch, right?
Well, definitely for me, but
For you,
there's a
but I'm
couple
pretty sure we
shows-
discussed something.
Yeah, if I off the top of my head, I think it'd be good for us to watch Dan to Dan because that is looking pretty good. It's also the beginning of a show. Dragon Ball, I can't Daima or something like that. I'm curious about watching. I don't know if you have a huge interest at Ranma.
Ron, I
Is
want to
coming
watch.
out.
Yep.
There's a couple other shows.
There'll be something,
Yeah.
but we got a little bit of time to fill between now and then, so we'll probably start watching something. We're thinking about going back and watching like Black Lagoon because you've never watched
Never
that.
seen it, yeah.
I watched it back in the day. I actually own it on fucking DVD. It's in storage somewhere. So I obviously liked it enough. But yeah, we'll take recommendations. So let us know. What do you think we should watch? Preferably something shorter for now, but
Yeah,
whatever.
like
Just give us something.
4 or 5 weeks roughly.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, I've been Seth. This has been Chevy. And until next episode, we will talk to you guys later.